Hey, I'm Tamara Kendacker, and you're listening to The Decibel from the Globe and Mail.
There is a server wall everywhere, and they are checking houses, army people and government people to know them and to get them. So we are hiding. We're in a bad situation, and we went to the airport with my whole family, and we couldn't get inside there.
These are the voices of Afghans who used to work for the Canadian government. We can't tell you their names or much else because they're afraid of being hunted down by the Taliban.
We left our house, and we are hiding in my uncle's house. And the situation is very dangerous in here in Kabul. We are hiding. I hope somebody should help us in this situation.
They are desperate to get out of Afghanistan and be relocated to Canada. The Taliban have swept into the capital, Kabul, ahead of the U.S. completing its withdrawal of troops. Taliban fighters easily pushed past Afghan forces who'd been trained for years by the U.S. And on Sunday, President Ashraf Ghani fled the country, saying he wanted to avoid bloodshed. And here's the deputy leader of the Taliban addressing the country in a video.
The way we have come through was unexpected, as we have reached the position which was never expected. But with the help of Allah, that He has given us the victory, and there is nothing like this in history.
Meanwhile, it's the first full day of the federal election campaign in Canada, and the issue of relocating former Afghan employees was the focus of most of the questions Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked during a campaign stop in Quebec.
President Biden announced his plan to withdraw troops in April. Why did it take your government until late July to announce a plan and start working on getting these people out? Why did you wait so long?
We didn't. We started working from the spring on repatriation, on evacuating individuals. I think people both in country and around the world have been dismayed by the speed at which things have happened. And quite frankly, surprised.
The relocation process has been going much more slowly than Afghans would like, and a network of Canadian volunteers and veterans has popped up to keep people safe while they wait.
But what's happened now that the Taliban is in Kabul is that they've started to kind of target certain areas where they think people are hiding out. And so they're starting to find these safe houses.
Menaka Raman-Wilms is a reporter for The Globe based in Ottawa, and I talked to her on Monday early afternoon. She's been talking to volunteers about the challenges they've been facing and the fears they have that their system is about to collapse. That's today on The Decibel. Hi, Menaka. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we've been covering the situation of Afghans who worked for the Canadian government, who want to be relocated to Canada in light of the Taliban taking over large parts of the country for a while now. And what are the people that you've been talking to telling you about how things have changed over the weekend and what's happening on the ground now?
Yeah, well, we have been following this for a few weeks, and it really does seem to be the last few days. Things have been escalating very quickly with the Taliban now in Kabul. And I was just talking to someone in Kabul this morning. He's an Afghan in the city, and he was saying the situation is very, very scary there, frankly. He actually said that a lot of shops are closed. The hospital is closed. He needed to get medicine for one of his kids. He couldn't get that. People are really uncertain because now that the Taliban is in the city, it's really hard to distinguish who is a member of the Taliban as well. So you're walking around, you don't know. So a lot of people are actually not leaving their houses. He's saying he's basically locked himself and his family in his house. The only time he goes out is to get food. And the way he does that is with a group of neighbors. So they kind of go in this group for safety to go to the market, get food, and then go back. And he was quite emotional, frankly, on the phone, saying he was really scared for himself and his 6 kids. And he has a daughter, and he's really worried about her. He wants her to continue to go to school, but they don't really know what the future holds there.
Can you tell me a bit about what's happening at the airport? We've seen these images coming out of there of people running alongside a U.S. military plane, like clinging onto it as it's taxiing off for takeoff. So what's happening there? It just looks so chaotic. So can you give me a sense of that?
Yeah, honestly, chaos really is the word that comes to mind. You see those images and it's just a whole bunch of people who are frankly really desperate and who see this as their way out and see this kind of the chance to get out is quickly closing as well. So basically, because there are flights that were and that are evacuating people, this is the place that everyone is gravitating towards to try to get on one of those planes. The problem is there's not a ton of flights, and people are not sure when they're coming. The civilian part of the airport is closed, so it's just military craft that's coming in right now. And so, yeah, people are doing whatever they can to try to get on those flights. And you've seen those videos. There's people running alongside the U.S. Plane as it's going down the runway. People are literally clinging to the side of that plane. And so, you've got to be pretty desperate to do that, right?
I saw another video where people were actually falling through the air as the airplane's taking off. And I guess they were holding on to the plane and fell as it gained more altitude. And people are really desperate. Are there any alternatives to the planes? Like, can people leave through land border crossings at this point?
Things are starting to shut down, so that's become a very difficult way to get out.
Taliban fighters say they've been ordered not to do anything to harm civilians, and they say that there's going to be a peaceful transition. Can you tell me what the fear is right now among people who used to work for the Canadian government? What kind of danger do they believe that they're in?
They're afraid that there will be reprisals from the Taliban. So even though this Taliban seems to say it will be peaceful, a lot of people are saying that's not going to be the case. And a person I was talking to today again was saying that what they've heard from before is a few days after the Taliban has come in, they'll be targeting people, so coming to doors of places where they know people are. And the people who are being targeted, of course, are those who worked with foreign governments, foreign military that was there. This is this whole issue of the military trying to get interpreters out and drivers out, because these are people that help foreign forces. And so the Taliban sees these people as the first target there. So people are really desperate and afraid for their lives, afraid for their families' lives, because the other things that we're hearing is if the Taliban can't necessarily find that specific person, they'll go after their parents or they'll go after their kids. And so that's why people are really scared for their family as well.
And have we seen reports of that happening already? People being targeted because they used to work for foreign governments?
We have, yeah. And I was actually talking to a couple of interpreters who were resettled in Canada with the last program about a decade ago. And one of them said that his parents were targeted because he came to Canada. Another one said that his cousins had been killed. And so even if once they're brought to safety too, it's not just themselves they're worried about. It's a bigger group that is in danger.
So the Canadian government announced a special immigration program in July to bring Afghans who worked with Canadian troops and diplomatic staff over, as well as their families. So how is that effort going right now?
So it's a little bit hard to tell because there's not a lot of information that the government is willing to share at this point. They are citing operational security for a lot of those details. And it is, of course, a very sensitive operation, but to try to gauge the success of it is a little bit difficult without the details. But just today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did say that
at least 807 Afghans have been evacuated to date, and over 500 have already arrived in Canada. We're working with international civil society partners as well as Canadian organizations to ensure we are resettling as many of the 20,000 Afghans we will be welcoming as quickly as possible.
What I was also hearing from people is, people were happy that there was a program and there was something in place that they could apply to, but the application process for that program was also very difficult for a lot of people. It was all in English. You needed a specific program in your computer to download it. You needed internet. You needed email access in order to do that. And so for a lot of people, that was a really difficult process to access. So I guess there's kind of mixed things that we're hearing about this program. Like a lot of people are glad that there's something in place, but others were saying it needed to be a little bit broader and frankly easier to access and maybe a little bit clearer communication on some of those things as well.
And the government has expanded this program to resettle 20,000 refugees. I wonder if you can tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so that was their announcement on Friday that they were going to bring in 20,000 Afghan refugees. But we're not really sure if these are people that will be coming from Afghanistan proper. The issue now with the Taliban taking control is that they're not going to want to really let Afghans leave the country. So the 20,000 could be coming from other places, like other refugee camps and things. And so we're still kind of waiting for a few more details on how that's actually going to work.
Has the government been caught off guard by how quickly things have deteriorated and how quickly Kabul was taken over? Because even days ago, there was a U.S. military assessment that said it could take months for this to happen.
Not just the government. I think pretty much everyone was caught off guard, or at least most people. Even the individual I was talking to this morning, he did not think things were going to happen this quickly. And so that's a big part of the reason too, right? We thought we would have a few more weeks at least to work through these evacuation plans. And because things have happened so fast, it's really left a lot of people without help.
So you wrote about this network of Canadian volunteers and veterans who are helping these people. Can you tell me about who makes up this network and what their role is in the evacuation process?
Yeah, for sure. So they're somewhat informal because they're essentially Canadian veterans who are volunteering their time and energy to help people. A lot of these veterans, they tell me how they do feel a connection to Afghanistan. They've served there. They know the people there. But basically, they were filling this gap in the process here because people were being flown out of Kabul airport. So what they did is they focused on that internal migration aspect. So bringing people from other parts of the country to Kabul. And they said they even co-opted helicopters at some points to fly people into the capital. And then what they would do is while people were waiting for their application to be processed and waiting for flights, they would put them up in these safe houses. So they had security guards. They would provide them with food, basic income so that they could sustain themselves and their families. Because again, they're not coming alone. They're usually coming with their kids or their spouses or their parents. But the difficulty there that they were telling me about is that because they're not a government organization, the government wouldn't necessarily communicate with them about when flights are coming in, about how many people would be evacuated. And so they were getting a little frustrated because they've done all this work to get people to Kabul, to get them ready to go, and then they don't know when they're actually going to be able to get to safety.
Do we have a sense of how many people want to be relocated and how many people are in these safe houses right now?
There's about 2,000 people that they'd like to relocate, but unfortunately, 1,200 of them are in the Kandahar area, and they don't think they can get them to Kabul at this point. So they're essentially saying that they won't be able to get them out. There's another 800 to 900 that are in Kabul that were in those safe houses, and they're waiting for that evacuation. But what I'm hearing this morning from them, too, is that this system of safe houses is essentially breaking down. So they were running out of money already to house these people, to provide security and everything. But what's happened now that the Taliban is in Kabul is that they've started to kind of target certain areas where they think people are hiding out. And so they're starting to find these safe houses, essentially. And people are getting scared and going into hiding or going to the airport because they're just desperately trying to see if they can find a way out. So unfortunately, it looks like this network of safe houses is starting to break down.
Who are the donors that fund these safe houses? And do you know where that money comes from?
Yeah, so these are like private donors, essentially. So either individuals or corporations that are giving money to house people. But what these veterans were actually asking for is that if they could get government funding to house people and then to have a date when they're flying out, that could be a way to sustain that. Or if they got an influx of donor cash as well.
Yeah. And how are these volunteers finding people who want to get out?
Well, a lot of them, they're former colleagues, essentially, people they worked with when they were in Afghanistan. So a lot of them needed help going through the application process. I spoke to one veteran who said he was getting hundreds of emails a day from people just asking for, the application was all in English, so asking for help translating the application or going over the application. One of the veterans I was speaking to just yesterday, actually, she was saying that they're getting a lot of updates from people, and sometimes these updates can be pretty desperate as well. People talking about how they've already been targeted. So she was saying that sometimes they get pictures of violent images and things of people that are really desperate, and saying like, please, I need help. This is what's going on. And so she's actually saying this is taking a real toll on the veterans themselves too, that a lot of people might come out of this with PTSD or being re-triggered because a lot of the burden is being placed on them. And essentially, they're not really being given resources or anything to do this work. They're just volunteering their own time and their own energy to do this.
And if the safe houses can no longer operate and they don't get that funding and the whole system collapses, what could happen to those people?
Those people are really vulnerable then. They don't have protection. And so if they're a target of the Taliban and they're in Kabul and they're found, I mean, it's a really dangerous situation for people to be in.
How does Canada's relocation effort compare to other Western countries that, like NATO allies, like the UK and the US and other countries that are trying to relocate Afghans who used to work for them?
So the U.S. has a much bigger operation because they were obviously there for a long time and they had a lot of personnel. So they've been doing it for a little bit longer than us. We only really started in July there. The U.K. also has a bigger operation. So we are working with a smaller amount of people, which is actually part of the reason why the government has said they're being so strict with that operational security line that we hear a lot. They say it's because we're dealing with a smaller number of people and because they don't want to give away even basic information about these groups.
Is there anything more that the Canadian government could be doing to make this process go faster? Are your sources telling you anything that they wish the government was doing?
Yeah, there's a few veterans I've spoken to who are really emphasizing the fact that we need to get people out of Afghanistan first and deal with paperwork later. The application process that was initially announced is you have to be in Afghanistan. The veterans I'm talking to now are saying just evacuate people, deal with the paperwork in Canada or in a third country, just literally to save lives. And then the other veterans who are running this network of safe houses say if they had government funding to house people, they could actually keep more people safe for a longer period of time. And of course, the communication aspect. Veterans who are running that group are really frustrated that the Canadian government is withholding all the details of the numbers of people and when planes are coming with them. One guy I spoke to yesterday said, he made the argument saying that, these people are used to dealing with confidential information and secure operations. And so even if they had little bits of information of when planes were coming and how many people could make it onto a flight, that would really help that whole process that they're working with.
Okay, Menaka, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tamara.
That's it for today. I'm Tamara Kandakar. Our producers are Madeline White and Kasia Mihailovich. Rebecca Weston is our intern. David Crosby edits the show, and Angela Pacenza is our executive editor. Thank you so much to Menaka Raman-Wilms. You can find her on Twitter at MenakaRW. That's MENAKARW. If you want to email us, you can reach us at thedecibel@globeandmail.com. If you want to reach me, I'm on Twitter at Anima_TK. We always want to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.